Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Invisible Industry, a podcast where we discuss and educate on everything you didn't know about agricultural rendering, brought to you by the North American Renderers Association, or NARA. I'm your moderator, Anna Wilkinson. I am the Vice President of Communications for NARA. And joining me, of course, is our host, Marcus Wintzer. Now, today we're going to be launching a new series on the show where we're going to be talking about where rendered products actually go. And for our first episode today, we're going to be focusing on animal feed. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Marcus to introduce our guest.
Thank you. Clark Miller, our guest today, grew up in the commercial cattle feeding industry in LaSalle, Colorado. He graduated from Colorado State University in 1992 with a degree in agricultural economics with an emphasis in animal science. Since then, he has continued to grow his expertise in animal feeds, working for such companies as Purina Mills, Miller Feedlot, is currently senior sourcing manager at Land O'Lakes Purina, and has been involved with futures trading. He is also the proud grandpa of 3 of the cutest little girls in the world. Thanks for being here with us today, Clark.
Thank you.
So, Clark, first question, which rendered products do you use, and do you have to process them further for your use?
So my focus really, I've used a lot of from the pork, meat, and bone meal, tremendous amount of blood meal, rail cars, trucks, everything. So I use a tremendous amount. And all of mine is going to go into the feed sector. Most of it, there's a little bit that I will sell directly into dairies to be used directly into their feed. But most of what I purchase is going to go into the Purina feed mills. We have 54 plants around the country. They're going to go into the feed mills and blend it either into a pellet, into a meal, into a mineral mix, going into the actual feed. So yes, there's further processing that we take it from the what we receive from the processing plants all the way to the into the finished feed to deliver to the ultimate customer.
Have you always used rendered products as an ingredient? And if not, what alternative products or ingredients have you used?
So interesting. So I started trading animal byproducts back in my younger days. I first started with Purina Mills the first time in the early 90s, and actually started trading some of the animal byproducts back then, which, back then meat and bone meal was just one. We did pork, meat, and bone meal. We did ruminant meat and bone meal. And then when we had to segregate the two, then you started segregating pork, meat, and bone meal, ruminant meat and bone meal, avian blood meal, ruminant blood meal, pork blood meal, and then I also buy plasma and things like that. So I actually think that I buy a tremendous amount of the rendered products, and I've done it for 35 years now.
If you wouldn't mind, could you give us tell us what the final product is and give us a little bit more of a description of it?
If you think about what our process is, we are in the feed industry. I look at it and say it's just like we're the bakers of the cake. So my job is to buy the ingredients, buy the sugar and the flour and everything, bring it in, and then we're going to put that into a cake to take it out to the customer. If you think about a pellet that we're coming into, depending on what that product is being used for and what the ultimate, so a lot of times, some of the rendered products, all of it is going to be, I say all of it, most of it is going to be the protein value in blood meal, the protein value of pork, meat, bone meal, et cetera. That's where the value comes. But if you take blood meal, for example, that's also a very good carrier for minerals. So what that finished product will look like is going to be different depending on what we're doing. So if I think about the pelleted product, you're taking several different ingredients, and it could be several dozen that go into mixing a ton of feed, and that process is going to be through heat and steam. It's going to mix for a time frame, and then it's going to be put into a pellet, and so you're not going to be able to distinguish anything in that pellet, individually. It's going to be, it might have wheat middlings in it, might have some soybean meal in it, might have some, but into that least cost formulation, that pellet's going to come to meet the formulation specs to the customer, and then that pellet is going to be delivered to the customer. On the other side of it is we may not pellet it. We may just mix it. I'm going to say mix it very well so that it's indistinguishable, but it's just mixing. It's not going through a pelleting process. So it'll come in again, several dozen different ingredients will come in to make that finished product, but it's mixed into a meal. Then that meal is then delivered into the dairy, or to the poultry facility, or to the hog facility, or just into consumer products as well. So that's where it's going to move from point. Our process is going to be combining dozens of ingredients to make one final ingredient that meets the nutritional requirements for that customer.
So you talked about nutritional requirements. This is kind of an off topic. I don't have this on the list of questions here, but curiosity, if somebody came along and they have came across some pelletized meal or whatever, the finished product for a cow, and they wanted to feed it to another animal, chicken, or pig, or even their pet dog or something like that. I mean, obviously it's not going to be formulated properly for that animal. I guess how different is it between the different species?
So it's going to be significantly different, especially depending on the type of product that you're going into. So we're very specific on the firewalls we have in place to have ruminant products that go into ruminant feeds. We can't have that at all. So we have so if there's any ruminant, meaning cattle feeds being manufactured in a facility, then we can't have ruminant meat and bone meal in that facility, beef meat and bone meal in that facility. So we have a tremendous amount of firewall. So you can't just take a feed that has been formulated for cattle and give it to hogs and vice versa. The other side of it is, I mean, as you all know, that the nutritional requirements for each of the animals, for example, a steer, cattle, etc., the way they metabolize because of their stomach system, they will metabolize nutritional products differently than what a hog will or a chicken will or anything like that. So the types of proteins that you use will be different for a cow versus a hog versus a chicken. So yes, for the most part, there's not going to be a problem if the chicken gets some cattle feed, but whether its ability to digest it will be significantly different. But you do not want to have going into the cattle side is where the big firewalls really happen.
Yeah, understandable with the BSE history and all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. How different would the product be without using rendered products?
The way I would look at it is that there's some products that, just from a formulation standpoint, because again, if you're trying to formulate, you're formulating off of so many different things. You're formulating off of, when I was at CSU and you had your Pearson Square, you're formulating off of protein and fiber, and that was about it. Today, we formulate off of so many different factors that it may include protein, it may include metabolized protein, it may include, there's fiber. It's going to include so many different things that if you take out something like animal, especially blood meal or pork meat and bone meal, et cetera, sometimes you can't actually solve that formula. So if I look at blood meal, for example, I love trading blood meal. It's one of my favorite things to trade, and there's lots of reasons for that. But one of the things is there are so many things that you can't replace it, because it's such a high protein. To solve for the protein to deliver it into that animal, it just physically can't be done without something that's extremely high in protein that's natural. You can get some other urea-based products, things like that you might be able to get that protein level, but then you've got a lot of other issues. So, blood meal is just it's a difficult product to use, but yet it gives the ability to solve so much of that nutritional requirement.
So Clark, it sounds like you're saying that it's critical for you guys to use rendered products in your to make the high quality finished product that you want to make.
Absolutely, the need for the rendered products is essential to some of our finished products. Some things you can formulate around, but there are several things that you cannot formulate around to hit the nutritional specs that those products require without the rendered products.
So it sounds like we've already kind of answered this next question, and let me know if I'm wrong here, but it's why do you use rendered products as a key ingredient instead of a synthetic alternative? And it sounds like you've answered that, if that you could be adding something else in or be lacking some other piece of the puzzle if you tried to do so.
Yeah, you're going to lack a piece of the puzzle because, again, you're trying to formulate for so many different factors. But the other side of it is you might, on paper, you might be able to solve for a formula, but that animal cannot, the digestibility of that animal is not, it just passes. For example, in cattle, it might just pass right through the rumen. So you don't get any nutritional value, even if it was incredibly high in protein. If they can't metabolize it, then it does that animal no good.
In an effort to understand future demand, what sort of growth do you anticipate for your products over the next 3 to 5 years?
The hope is that you continue to grow all of our products and continue to grow your business. The one thing that I kind of see is a massive move that the industry will continue to have to make. And I think about this, that, it happened back in the late 90s in the hog industry. You see it happen in the cattle industry, and you're seeing it happen in the dairy industry. But as the individual processor, the individual growers begin to get bigger and more commercialized, what they start doing is their demands actually change, where a dairy may need, they might sit there and say, I can buy all of my blood meal because I'm big enough. I can buy, rather than running it through the feed, I can buy it direct from the processor, the beef packing facilities, et cetera. Or I can, somehow start cutting out that middleman, because I can have a more concentrated package right onto their facility. So I think the biggest thing that you're going to see as producers get bigger, the demands, the way we supply their nutritional needs are going to change from them being able to take larger pieces of the same thing. Again, using animal byproducts rather than running through a feed mill. They may buy it direct, and we got to figure out how to formulate around that.
With respect to that growing market demand for your products, what challenges do you think you're going to face?
The biggest challenge that I would say that we face, and this is just the nature of what we deal with, everybody in the industry wants price protections. They want to be able to control their costs so that they can, in essence, protect their margin. There's so many opportunities, so many things available to protect their finished margin, because all they're trying to do is stay in business, protect the margin, make a good margin over the course of time. One of the challenges that you have with rendered products that you don't have with a lot of other products is it's a very difficult market to purchase forward. So if I'm selling a 3-month a 3-month product to a customer, but yet your rendered product facilities, because of the rendered products, whether it be your tallows, your blood meals, your animal byproduct, or pork meat, bone meal, etc., they have such huge price swings, and absorbing that risk for the customer is very difficult to do. So if I would say the biggest challenge that we have is how do you protect yourself from a price standpoint as you're selling that product to the customer, because that customer needs the ability to price their feed so that they can manage their margins.
How's that been lately with, commodities are, up and down with fuel prices and everything else lately, just high. It's probably been pretty tough to keep yourself safe then.
It has been I would say, and I love what I do, but it has been in my 35 years of doing this. I've never, the challenges that we've faced over the last 3 years have been just extreme. My little joke that I tell people, I said every day I feel like that I'm putting a puzzle together, figuring out how to make all the pieces work across our 54 feed mills. But every day at about 9 o'clock, the 4-year-old comes and knocks the table and messes up my puzzle, because the logistics side of it, what happens with processors being able to operate, your demand and your supply and demand just have not met easily. I mean, the price fluctuations. I mean, blood meal, just because that's close to my heart, the price fluctuations that we've seen this year on blood meal, I've never seen in my 35 years. You go from, ruminant blood meal from $600 a ton to close to $3,000 a ton, back to $600 a ton. It's just massive moves, and the ability to manage that risk and manage that risk to the customers is very difficult. So yeah, it's been unreal over the last 2 to 3 years, and especially this last year for some reason.
Well, this is our last question. What competitive advantages do you feel you have versus your competitors through using rendered products?
So I guess there's a few things that I would say kind of is a huge advantage, and this is where I've got advantages that some others don't, but because of my large buying footprint across the country, I'm able to, those risks that we talked about that are out there that most people can't absorb, I can absorb them because I've got storage facilities in parts of the country that I can protect some price risk, and I can kind of move some things around. So that's one advantage that I have. The other thing that I think just really helps us work through things is the ability to least cost formulate. As you start seeing things just kind of moving up and down, you can manage your risk a little bit through the formulation side. And I would say that the one of the advantages, some people may say disadvantages, for me would be the relationships that we've developed over the last that I've developed over the last 30 years. I'm still trading and building relationships with the same people that I traded and had relationships with 30 years ago. So one thing that is changing that I struggle with, I don't really like, is that there is a generation of trying to do everything through email and just the nonverbal communications. And I really feel like that the way you develop a partner, which again, I look at, the rendering operations, I look at them as partners because we're all trying to get accomplished the same thing. And by those relationships that I have, they understand the needs that I have, and I understand what they have, and we work together very well. And that comes with just building relationships in the industry.
Yeah, you remind me a lot of a person I used to work with, he was on the sales end for rendered products. So he was always the face to face and building those relationships was always very important. It is still, I think. And one of the things too that you said that you can kind of hedge your bets a little bit with storing some product in other places. That's got to be tricky though with the shelf life that you might run into with rendered products.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that shelf life. But again, the industry has done such and not exaggerating, the industry has done such an incredible job of building a very a product that has a long shelf life. And if you care for it, if you take care of it and store it properly, our ability to store is pretty significant. But again, that's come from the industry continuing to make a product that is consistent it's consistent. And again, we can move it a lot of miles, et cetera.
Clark, I really appreciate you being on today. I think you've really had some great informative answers here. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you today.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed being a part of it.
Thanks, Marcus. And again, thank you so much, Clark, for joining us. And for all of you out there listening or watching online, we appreciate you joining us for another episode of The Invisible Industry. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit us online by going to www.nara.org. Stay curious, everyone. And to all our rendering listeners, stay seen and stay green.